Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group. I'm Riley.
I'm Krista.
And we're diving into coaching and developing through questions. I know that I am intelligent because I know nothing. Socrates. And we were talking about this quote before we started and really digesting it. What does it really mean to know nothing? A lot of our knowledge is second, third, fourth, fifth. What do we really do know? We weren't the scientists that figured out that there's oxygen in the air. We didn't break down the molecular, but we do understand those to be truths. And then how do you apply something as abstract as the scientific molecular breakdown of things and then apply it to your everyday life and when incidences happen and how it's so easy to run away with our assumptions and how it creates so many more problems. And instead, if we stick in that humility of, well, I don't really know anything, so I should ask more questions.
It's the beginner's mind in the whole Buddhist tradition. It's making strange in organizational development, which means they call it like making strange. When you see somebody who you are very familiar with, they call it making strange. Like this is the first, like they're a stranger the first time you see them. So it's again, seeing somebody anew instead of going on assumptions. It's dealing with the whole arrogance, which is I ask no questions. I mean, this is so foundational. You just start looking at this in society and you see the difference between truly intelligent people.
What really triggered for me when you were talking about that was thinking about how we help people change for the better. And I was thinking of something that someone maybe does that we don't like. And maybe we live with them. Instead of going through our assumptions, or maybe we even do know why they do it. And we know that they're lazy, they maybe have a bad habit of not cleaning up after themselves, whatever it might be. The pointing it out doesn't create the change. The asking the questions of why they do that behavior creates the change. And so even that is a form of, okay, I'm not going to act like the know-it-all and scold this person into doing something. I'm going to ask questions to empower them, to make them want to do that, because then not only do they correct it this time, ideally they correct it for the future as well.
That's the development model. That's the same way is Infinity Loop Kids and the Tao, which is the adolescent opportunity of creating awareness of people to go, why do I do? It's always going the deeper level.
The biggest thing that I've noticed from my evolution of awareness is how many people are so unaware about what they're doing, how it's being perceived by others, how it's affecting others. And so instead of going from a place of attacking and shaming, when you go from a place of inquiry, people are usually shocked by how they're being perceived or how their actions are affecting others and are very quick to want to change those things. I think just most people are oblivious.
Because you're coming in connection, they're becoming aware of the connection of how their behavior is affecting you. Because when that happens, very often people are unaware because many, many people live within a very self-absorbed world because the ego mind is constantly thinking and they are not present. And so they're constantly thinking about what they need to do, and they're not thinking about how their behavior is affecting other people. So it's a way of doing it that's, again, up-leveling them in a very connected, loving way through inquiry.
It's the easiest way to regulate your own emotions because it stops you from going up the ladder of assumptions and stuff, right?
Staying in the triggered anger or judgment.
As soon as you start going to those things, it's because you're telling yourself a story. All the emotions start flooding in. You become angry because they left their bag right by the door and you tripped over it instead of going, well, what maybe happened? Maybe they had a bathroom emergency and threw it down and had to run to the bathroom and they're actually in the bathroom right now.
You're so awesome.
Right? There's always a perspective of, well, let me ask some more questions. Let's dive deeper. And maybe you had the right to be frustrated. Your frustration then can come from a non-restricted form. Cannot be a tool of negativity, but a tool of positivity in your life, because you're not allowing it to bring you down, but you're allowing it to create more inquiry.
That's beautiful. That's exactly it. You went to curious instead of critical. The curious is connected. It is connected and it's humble. It's grounded and humble. What am I not seeing? And it's connected to our own, what I call the red pouch, our own failings. It's not in judgment. It's not in separateness of that person is what is causing the problem in my life. Instead of being in the infinity loop with them, where you're like, oh, that's interesting. The backpack is sitting right in the line of everyone's walking again. And there's a playfulness and a lightness. It's a positivity. How can we fix this together to help someone become more aware of other people without needing to shame? It's again this development level. It's just such love and grace, but it is effective. You are not ignoring it. You are dealing with it in a connected, loving, intelligent way.
I love this because I think it really brings in two statements that we say, and they can kind of be contradictory, but I think through this is you find the true line.
Well, they're paradoxical, probably.
Right. Well, what you permit is what you promote, and what you resist is what will persist.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about that.
Right. So what you permit is what you promote. Mm-hmm. So you are not permitting the bad behavior because you are acknowledging it, but you are also not fighting the bad behavior, so it does not persist. So you are not promoting it because you acknowledge it, but you are not fighting it, so it does not persist. You create the inquiry, which allows us both to move over it and move past it and grow together. And so to me, those are so often people worry about, well, I want to stop something from persisting, so I'm shutting it down. Well, then by shutting it down, you're resisting it, and that causes it to persist. So it's right. It's not about just standing your ground and stopping something from persisting, because that's going to create a different kind of fighting dynamic.
So good.
So that's where
good.
the questions will allow you to move past the persistence, because you're not resisting it. You're creating the bigger picture. You are inviting them into the bigger picture so that it is not this struggle session. It's the bringing awareness to all things.
See, that's where I struggled before I knew this and when you guys were little. It was the resistance. Right. This should not be happening. My children should not be behaving this way. This cannot be the plan for the family that God had. This is craziness, And instead of going, oh, that's interesting, it is happening. That is the contemplative view. Oh, look at what's showing up. It's the non-resistance. How then intelligently do I help us all become more loving, aware, conscientious human beings?
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, frickin', that's great.
Because it's moving away from resisting things that aren't positive in your life, right? You don't like it when that is done that way, but instead of resisting it, you go to the inquiry, which empowers the person to change. I
mean, that's really at the heart of so much, negativity, complaining, which I think is very tied to entitlement, that life should be anything other than it is right now. Right. We really forget how good we have it compared to our ancestors or a large percentage of the other 8 billion people on the planet. There's a significant enough of a number that is so struggling to survive and to have quality water and food and safety. I mean, it's just real. And so we get into this negativity, we allow it, but it's all part of that resistance. This should not be happening. My life things should go easier for me. That's where the ego is not in service. That quote again, Socrates said, I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing. Boy, I want to start saying that more. We got to start really bringing this in. I know that I'm intelligent because I know that I know nothing. I love that. This is one of the main ways by which we create a learning container. We're always coaching and developing each other when we live this way. Ex duco means to lead out, as in to lead out of ignorance, which is the root of the word education. The overall purpose of Socratic questioning is to challenge accuracy and completeness of thinking in a way that acts to move people toward their ultimate goal.
I think this is so important about education. This form of education is so different than modern education. So much of modern education is about projecting information and you memorizing it, where this is all about questioning the information you have to get more information and understanding that it's a collective understanding, not an individual understanding. So even like how school teaches, it's very linear. This is the way it is. This is what happened. There is no room for questioning. And to me, that's why people actually don't learn anything. It's because there is no questioning, because if you aren't questioning the things, you don't actually retain that information.
Yeah. I know you're generalizing, but I know you're saying as a rule, unless they're teaching you how to think for yourself or how to take this information, like really great teachers do this.
Well, it's the best way to be able to know, did you really learn something, is can you teach it to someone else? Mm-hmm. To do that requires a certain level of questioning that most schooling, at least when I was in school, was almost not allowed, mm-hmm. right? I was almost shamed for asking too many questions,
Me
right?
too.
Because then they're not able to say their direct thing, that this is all that really matters, this is all important. Mm-hmm. If you have a question, then you're not getting the picture. Mm-hmm. Instead of going, no, maybe you're getting the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, it's true.
I feel like questioning is the root of learning, and I believe that has been sucked out of a lot of school.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just doing that more and more and more and more and more. I mean, I always do it in my coaching, consulting, like, don't you have the answers? Like, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know the unintended consequence. I mean, if you look at the world today, so many practices set in place in society are, well, look at those unintended consequences that made a shit show. Look at that. And everything has its light and shadow. We are picking our regrets, any laws that we have. And that is the higher order of thinking. That is the more psychological health that isn't splitting, that isn't black and white. That's the non-dual consciousness.
My favorite phrase, the pathway to hell is paved in good intentions.
Yeah.
And the reason why that pathway is paved in good intentions is because they're unwilling to acknowledge the unintended consequences. And when those unintended consequences start coming up, they ignore them, they dismiss them, they try and pretend that they don't even exist, rather than ask questions, rather than have the level of awareness to understand how their good intention thing is causing a lot of negative side effects.
I know I'm going to go on a tangent here, but we're just going to do this. The thing about being a contemplative and even being a mystic is this feeling of both groundedness, which this is very, very grounding to be asking questions. You're grounded. You're like feeling the gravity of things that you're thinking, decisions you're making, and this groundlessness, which is this like falling, this letting go of the certitude of the ego, of the certitude of your life, of the control of the ego mind. I mean, to be able to do this kind of thinking, the ego mind quiets down. It's a different level of thinking. It's what we call thinking together. Here are the 6 types of questions that Socrates asked his pupils, often to their annoyance, but more often to their ultimate delight. The first one is clarifying questions. This is what should be taught. We go through the adolescent opportunity, but we should be so, I'm going to should this. We should be so skilled at this in society today. May we bring it back. May we bring it back.
Get others to think more about what they're thinking about. Mm-hmm. Use basic, tell me more questions that get them to go deeper.
God, that whole thing, tell me more. Like, what if we just did that with kids when they started coming? I think I should have a cell phone, and they're, in 3rd grade, a smartphone. Oh, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that.
I would also say that when you ask questions like that, you get to the root of why people believe what they believe, or the fact that maybe they believe something that they don't actually know why they believe it.
This is just like in more holistic or functional medicine. Instead of just fixing the problem, they're going, well, why is that not working in your system.
Right. Instead
let's go
of
deeper.
Stopping the inflammation, let's find out why you have this inflammation.
To begin with. It's everything is deeper, 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 deeper. So why are you saying that? What exactly does this mean?
How does this relate to what we've been talking about? What do we already know about this? Can you give me an example? Are you saying, or
This.
this or that? Can you rephrase that, please? And again, I think these all are about empowering the person also. It's about turning the conversation where you might disagree not into an argument, but a connection session.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a struggle session,
learning
instead
together.
of a struggle session, it's a connection session, right? Because of how these questions are set up, they're really meant to empower the person that believes the way they believe, and for you to understand where they're coming from, even if you then don't agree with them.
Right.
It's still coming from a more connected, understanding place.
You're empowering the other person to even make a better argument. Like, show me where I'm wrong. Influence me more. Can you say that a different way? Or give me more arguments to sell me on your point of view.
Right.
Clarifying questions. Okay, what if we did this in every marriage, every relationship, every dating, every parenting, every work? What do we do instead? We advocate. I need to tell you my point of view. I need to shut down your idea. I need to give you data. I need to prove that I know something.
That is interacting in the way that we are trying to stop.
Yes.
Right? So that is interacting in the form of projection and not connection. We want to interact in the form of connection and communication.
So this is where I would say, when I was saying in one of the last podcasts, there's people who call themselves coaches. They may not, professional coaches, but they're like, that's my gift in life. I'm a coach. That's really what my purpose is. I coach these people in my life. And I look at their lives and the way they talk to people and I gasp. I go, that is everything against everything I believe about coaching. There's no inquiry here.
Well, because they're using the coaching term of almost like a sports analysis of, I am the elder and I am going to tell you what to do because you don't have the skills to do it. Where our coaching is about developing people to we all are elders in our own way. We are all connected to our ancestors. We all have this innate divine knowledge tapped inside of us. We just need to ask the right questions for it to come out.
I was just telling this to a client who's older, very smart, and he was like, well, I need to either go to, dive into this with you or someone else that's going to show me how I need to sort of break this timeline in my life of how I'm going to transition this. And I'm going, dude, you got it inside you. You just need to tap into your intuition and get into that inner stillness. And you're going to know exactly the right time that you're going to want to back off of work and what you're going to want to do. We are our own inner authority. We don't need to have someone else on the outside telling us how we should be making these very deep personal decisions about our lives.
Well, when you ask yourself the questions, the answers become you don't need someone else to guide you because your soul will speak so loudly because you have asked itself the right questions.
Beautiful, beautiful. Question assumptions. Questioning assumptions makes people think about their unquestioned beliefs on which we found most of our arguments. So most arguments are founded on assumptions. This is, I call it, you have your sword and you're quick with the sword. This is what I mean, the sword of truth. This is the ability to dialogue and help people think together. And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean it in a beautiful way. It's a sword of truth even that just helps surface the truth and the skill that you are able to come back so fast and your ego is in a right place. You have a healthy sense of self that you can stand up to people's irritation, that they get irritated sometimes with you when you even question their assumptions, but when you just come back in a calm way, you hold your ground, you go, well, I'm asking this because blah, blah, blah.
The swords aren't trying to stab each other. It's a sparring session.
Sparring.
Right? It's what makes us both better at our communication, about asking questions, about our own awareness, because that is what the sparring is about, is becoming more aware at where you're putting your feet, is putting more aware of where your weight is being distributed at. And as we
beautiful.
take that into our emotional landscape as well.
And we are presenting an argument. I remember saying to a client who's just so loving and peaceful, I said, well, I would argue this. He goes, well, I don't want to argue. And I'm like, no, I mean it in the most beautiful way. I'm setting an argument to say, not to argue, but to set an argument, to say a position. I'm making the position, I'm thinking this is the direction we need to go in. And
it's your hypothesis.
Yeah, and it's like it was like a triggering word. It's so funny. So what else could we assume?
You seem to be assuming.
How did you arrive at those assumptions?
Please explain why and how.
How can you verify or disprove that assumption?
What would happen if?
Do you agree or disagree with?
And I would say out of all those questions, they're all wonderful, but I would say my favorite is definitely the what would happen if, because from my experience when dealing with people that are triggered, that seems to be one of the best ways to bring them out of their triggeredness, of going, well, what if...
Triggeredness.
Well, yeah, what if that assumption's not true? What if everything that, it's just the easiest way to kind of take that step back of, you create this what if scenario. Well, what if that's not true? What if there's a possibility that you don't have all the information? What if, and that, to me, that's just like, it cuts through people's restricted awareness so well. It requires creativity, which creativity is so much connected to the Lord, the universe, right? So
creativity,
when we are being creative, we are being loving. So something that is now triggering you, you are now being creative about maybe other solutions or other ways of not being triggered by it. And now you are creating a just more loving container, a more open container, and you're able to get out of your restricted awareness. So
I would argue, what I love about the value of becoming as a little child, that you may enter the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is a field. And children score like in the 95th percentile in high creativity before age 7. And there's something about the buoyancy, the bounce, the joy, the youthfulness. I mean, one things people say about me, they could say, okay, your face looks like a healthy 56-year-old, but I have so much bounce and youthfulness in my being that has served me and is serving my mitochondria, that's keeping me youthful, because I live in that creative, playful, childlike energy where you go, oh, we're going to go back to the chapter before that was all about what don't we know, what's unknowable. And it's all creative play. What's unknowable? We don't know why the backpack is sitting in the middle of the floor again. And it's not giving them more information and berating them and shaming them and punishing them for it. It's creative solutions.
Right. How can we turn it into a game, right?
How do we make it playful?
Kids are very creative at making everything into games.
Gamifying it.
And how important and helpful that is. And so it's like, if we can remember those types of tools as we become older, to tap into the importance of staying a child and remembering life is a game, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying it and making things that are serious into a little bit more playful gamifying.
And this
things.
is again the infinity loop. It's the paradox. It's always the both and. Mature and childlike. Mature. This is it. Inquiry is mature and childlike. It is high order thinking, mature, intelligent, developed brain, and childlike and humble.
Right.
Confident and humble.
It's not the childlike temper tantrum. It's the childlike inquiry.
It's not childish, it's childlike.
Right. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, which is very beautiful. And the high order of thinking, it's the humble and confident, because you have to be confident enough when someone goes, why are you asking me? Of course we know why it's that way. And you've got to be confident enough to go, oh no, actually, we don't know that for sure. I would like to ask this again from you. I mean, that confidence and then that curiosity, being okay looking stupid.
So I really have liked this word more than confidence, capable.
Or competence?
Competence, that's
competence
right. Competence. And
Yeah.
to me, I think that is a much more robust word that has a lot more positive meaning behind it than
I think the competence gives you confidence.
Correct.
I have to say, because I'm competent in this, I have a lot of confidence when I'm in any kind of set. Like, I don't question why I'm questioning anyone because I know I have so much respect for the Socratic method and these fathers of organizational development and mothers who have brought this back into deeper and deeper levels of how we can think together and dialogue. But it gives you enormous amount of confidence when you are competent. And they say he who asks the question is in control. Question reasons and data. This is number 3. When people are giving reasons for their assumptions, question their reasoning rather than assuming it's a given. People often use unthought through or weakly understood data, i.e. anecdotal, to support arguments.
I think of back to also the intelligence of knowing nothing, of how so often we will use data as if we were the scientists that did the test, right? Like we're so confident in this.
Yes, and we monitored everything involved during the test, the trial.
And then you find out that it was lied and manipulated about, and you've been arguing all these conversations for the last 6 months and walking around with this arrogance of as if you know so much more than other people, finding out, oh, well, it was all just lies anyways that you were building your entire argument off of.
Yeah, I mean,
they weren't even your lies. They were someone else's lies that you're building your argument.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to these health researcher podcasts every single day. It is like my favorite thing to do besides learning all this stuff. Being in the ocean's good too. But I mean, I'm just like going, holy crap. They're saying this study and this study contradicts this study. It's like you got to walk with a humility to be in the I don't know. I'm just going to do my best today to figure out what I should eat, how I should exercise. Okay, question, reasons, and data. Okay, why is that happening?
How do you know this?
Show me ...
Can you give me an example of that?
I need to use that more. Can you show me what data you're picking to say that? I should say, can you give me an example of when I've ever done that to you? When someone goes trigger, goes on and on.
I think that's really important in relationships because people will villainize the other person, kind of. And it's very quick to try and create this story. They run away with their assumptions and
their projections,
and they project all this kind of negativity onto someone. And it can really be all flipped on its head if you can go, can you give me an example of that? Because it's no longer an emotional argument, it's a factual argument. And most of the time, people are triggered from their emotions, not from actual
And they're projecting because they can't hold their own stuff. And again, it is not coming from, I'm going to catch you and I'm going to win this argument. It's coming from just love and connection. It's coming from, even though I'm not you, I'm not other than you. And I am in this with you. There's so much love that we are tapped into in the infinity loop, in the abundant field. We can hold. Can you give me an example of that without trying to win?
If you really are open to the change and growth in your own journey, when you ask for, can you give me an example of that? And they give you an example, that's that awareness of how easy it is to be unaware about how we're being perceived by others and how our actions are affecting others. And so by be given the example, now it's our opportunity to rise up in the situation and acknowledge maybe our shortcoming and going, oh, wow, thank you for pointing that out. That is something I'm going to work on because that is not something I want to project or continue to participate in the world.
Mm-hmm. What do you think causes blah, 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 blah? Oh, that would be such a great thing to sit with your kid. What do you think causes you, sweetie, to not get the backpack on the hook every day?
I'm bored, Mommy. What causes you to think that you're bored?
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, what's
that feel like? What's that feel like in your body?
And make them even define what being bored is. And maybe you can really change the relationship that a child has with that word. Because to me, Dad always said at a very early age, the only people that are bored are boring people, and you're not a boring person. So find something to do. He said it at a young age, but it clicked with me. At a young age, anytime I was bored, I questioned, what is this feeling? Because it really is never boredom. The deeper and more emotionally aware you become, you understand that boredom is a feeling of trying to be distracted from something else you should be addressing. Your emotions are wanting to be distracted, and that's why you don't want to be bored.
You don't like the empty space. We don't like the empty space.
But a child who has imagination, that's where they thrive. That's that connecting to God, to embracing the empty space, to have more imagination. And when you have more imagination,
self-reflection.
There's nothing to be bored of when you just can keep imagining all these beautiful potentials of the world.
What is the nature of this?
Are these reasons good enough?
Why is blah, blah, blah happening?
Why? Keep asking it. You'll get to the root by asking it a few times.
Yeah, they call it the 5 whys. Leah would call it the 5 whys. And it's not always why. It could be why, how, when, where. Like when we're developing people and they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, yeah, you do. We're just going to sit and you keep asking, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper, and they know exactly why they are doing, what their belief system is, what is keeping them from achieving what would be in their best interest.
And usually that growth from, I don't know why I do this, to eventually them explaining why they do it, usually breaks down in tears. The level of shattering of their own illusion, that the disconnect of their actions and why they're reacting a certain way is usually so strong that when they finally do get broken through, it's like a flow of emotions that come behind it. Would you say that that's how you experience when you're coaching others?
Yeah,
people?
So beautiful. And that when you are loving them in this way, it brings them back to self-love, because that is the estrangement from ourselves when we don't know why we're doing what we're doing or having the power, is we are not in the great love affair with ourselves. We have not allowed all of our parts and made all of our parts okay. So we're at war with parts of ourselves. And when we love others, it invites them into the great love affair with themselves. We say, oh, isn't that okay? I'm like that. We can be integrated and not work against our own best interests.
It's so much easier to work on our own shortcomings when we are in an environment that is encouraging of that growth, not judging of the fact that you hadn't done it yet.
Yeah.
What data is there to support what you're saying?
On what data are you basing your argument? Question viewpoints and perspectives. This is number 4. Most arguments are given from a position, so question the position. Show that there are other equally valid viewpoints.
Another way to look at this is, does this seem reasonable?
What alternative ways of looking at this are there?
And I would say this perspective aspect is, so many people, when arguing a point, believe that they are standing on rock solid foundation. And if you start acknowledging that maybe it's a little more like hay or sand, you're addressing the root of the argument, not even the argument itself, because so often we run with something without asking all the questions to why we got there. Because so much of this information is emotionally charged, not factually charged.
What alternative ways of looking at this are there?
Why is it blank blank necessary? Why is it necessary for you to drop the backpack by the door every time instead of hanging it on the hook?
Who benefits from this?
What is the difference between this and that?
Why is it better than?
What are the strengths and weaknesses of?
How are you blah, 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 and similar? Or how are these ideas different and similar? Yeah.
How could you look another way at this?
What would blah, blah, blah say about this?
Like, what would someone that you admire how they deal with things say about this? How would your teacher respond to this thing that you're triggered by? Question implications and consequences. The arguments people give may have logical implications that can be forecast. Do they make sense? Are they desirable?
Then what would happen?
What are the consequences of that assumption?
What are the implications of?
How does this affect that?
How does blank fit with what we learned before?
Why is this important?
What is the best blank and why? God, could you imagine? Could you imagine if this was happening in every family, in every marriage, in every meeting, sitting with questions?
I just know from my own coaching how quickly it builds relationships that feel like they're falling apart. Because what this does is the more questions we ask and answer, the more infrastructure we have in our relationship, right? The more scaffolding we are building, the stronger the building we are creating together because we have all these questions, which are all these wonderful beams holding up our relationship and building it like a skyscraper. Use questions against themselves. Bounce the ball back into the other court.
So this is number 6, which is question questions. Yeah, question questions. Bounce the ball back into the other's court. Yeah. What was the point of asking that question?
Why do you think I asked that question?
Am I making sense? And why not?
What else might I ask?
What does that mean?
And I think that is important, the what else might I ask. If you're genuinely trying to understand where someone is coming from, you could even frame the question of going, well, what information do I not have? Maybe you know the question I should be asking, or, you know.
And again, I just keep saying this, but you know, this is not normal. You don't even learn this stuff in marriage therapy a lot of times or in parenting. This is not our normal MO of how society talks to each other. This is a very high level, intelligent way I'm saying the new human talking this way. So people don't like being questioned at first. But you got to hold your ground in love. So you can go, oh, that didn't work. They got irritated when I asked them a question. I'm like, well, if you pat it, if your heart's in the right place, your spirit's in the right place, you're dropped into connection, you're not thinking, now I'm superior because I know these questions. You give them reasons of why you're asking these questions. It will get them more comfortable having their positions questioned. You are teaching them how to think together.
The more you question things and create this a regular practice, the more you create the environment that is empowering of all. Once you get past the idea that someone is questioning what you're doing as if it's in a form of an attack on you, and instead of understanding that the questions are there to help make any decision you make stronger and to make the people around you understand why you made those decisions so that they can support you or make it all comes back to the empowerment of all parties, right? Questions truly do empower all parties. And I think the importance of questions is it roots out narcissistic behavior. It roots out people that are being malicious, people that are being manipulative, because anyone that's unwilling to be questioned are usually doing those things.
Yeah, inquiry, man. It is foundational.
It's the tool that digs out the weeds of our communication.
Yeah. You know, and you can ask a question in a really calm way when somebody comes back very defensive and triggered and thinks it's not being supportive, that you're even asking a question, and you're just calm and it's just showing their stuff. Are very often so living from their ego and how their unregulated emotions are woven into their certitude, which is a very ego position that is very fixed. It's not a growth mindset. It's much more of a fixed mindset that you can go, oh, well, you know, and it shows very quickly somebody who wants to look at themselves and that is truly, it's not their words, but their practice of how they're living their lives if they're growth minded.
That's so great with how will this change the way you speak up or develop the muscle to speak up out of curiosity and your desire to make a positive change.
That's what it's about. It's very much about you're doing it for your own development of your own muscle. You're using the other person, even if they're not, going to benefit from it, to you getting used to speaking up. That's why I'm teaching kids that are young. Hon, we're going to develop this muscle now, and you're going to realize how much power you have in every situation. But if you start developing this muscle of curiosity and not caring what the consequences are.
What is the most humbling aspect of these questions in terms of how we are not doing them when it's the smartest and most aware thing to do? I mean,
I'm so humbled by them all the time.
Well, it's the entire practice is about humbling ourselves and understanding the importance of asking questions and understanding that we fall short and don't always, but we can always come back to it and we can always start. That being said, we just thank all you who take the time to listen to us. And as this channel grows and we connect and communicate more and more, we really appreciate your time and sharing this message with those around you. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.